on this feast of St. Martha, the Church gives us two possible Gospels. One is in the context of Lazarus being raised from the dead. The other is in the context of this meal where Martha is serving. In the first case, we have this situation where Mary, her sister, is again in a state of great recollection. Her sorrow is very interior and hidden. And it is the other one who taps her and says, "The Master is here and is calling you." And she wakes up and jumps up. In the other Gospel proposed to us, we have this by now much commented scene. "Martha, Martha, you worry and fret about so many things, and yet few are needed, indeed only one." Now the commentators tell us that the possible original and primary meaning of this is that actually one dish would be enough. But it has come down in spirituality as the expression now canonized as the unum necessarium, the one thing necessary. And to celebrate again this feast, a week after, of course, that of Mary Magdalene, is an annual reminder of these two poles, the which cannot be separated. According to tradition, Mary Magdalene, feasted on the 22nd of July, was, and is to the end of time, a model of affective bonding with the Lord, expressed totally, actually, according to tradition, in the eremitic life. For an unbroken tradition does inform us that she became a hermit in the south of France, in the present Sainte-Baume, a grotto one can still visit. And it is not at all impossible, given the traffic by the channels of water communication in the Mediterranean basin. And therefore she has been and is still very much a model for the monastic life. In the case of the female, it is very evident that she channeled all this huge affective energy which she had in one only direction. It already comes through in the Gospel, this woman of great love, who expressed it in many ways, even in the Gospel. Now, Martha is presented as the one, that typical holy woman who gave herself in a concrete expression of that, serving, and the Lord was not at all putting that down, and that's the bit that sometimes is misconstrued. Across the centuries we have so many, but so many examples of Holy Martha coming again in history. And the woman by nature is that way inclined. By her very structure, she gives and she cares, she intuits and knows. And the Lord uses that, often actually directly in communication precisely with the priesthood, because a priest knows that to have Martha in some shape or form nearby is a huge asset. Unfortunately, there has crept into female spiritual life in recent years a harshness of femininity, which is not at all true femininity. This element of wanting to be, as it were, men. No. One is not superior to the other, there is a difference, and the superiority of the female is in actualizing the specificity of that difference, not in trying to be what she is not. A woman has a capacity for intuition and service which is actually by nature calling her to that form of heroic sanctity. Of course, a woman can also be called upon to teach, and some lectures which we had in Rome were often very well executed by women of great culture. But it is not sufficient to indirectly want to take the man's part, because that is actually creeping in quite a lot, unfortunately, to female spiritual life, at least in many congregations, and it's not healthy. And one sees actually the fruit of it. It's not great, because the Lord is not free to call to a congregation or a community which is actually not really executing in concrete all that he wishes. One sees, on the contrary, that female congregations which are receiving blessings from the Lord from on high in the form of generous vocations are precisely those who actualize the true feminine, who aim towards love bonding at the altar, adoration, and then it's outworking in whatever form of service that may be. Just that as a parenthesis, that the woman has her superiority, but it is to be investigated in that area where the Lord himself, as the maker and designer of the human person, has actually placed it, not elsewhere. What then has Martha to tell us? Well, precisely this element of what the Lord is himself saying. One thing is necessary, and we can see that happening actually even on a daily basis. We see that sometimes we fidget and fuss when a friend comes. We start to prepare cups of tea and all that goes with it. Sometimes we talk about all kinds of things and do not learn to be tasting and enjoying and relishing the presence of the friend in quietness. There needs to be a simplification of our communion. Communion, if it is profound, is tranquil. That happens on the human level, it happens on the divine. That element of letting the Lord be the Master. The Lord, the Master, is here and is calling you. A word which one finds sometimes written at the foot of the tabernacle. Something which we need to learn. The Lord in the tabernacle is the Master, and he wants us to be at his feet like Mary, with nothing else to do at that point but be there and let him reign from the tabernacle. When he finds a soul tranquil and abdicating at that point from all activity and command, then he can begin to be for that soul. Let us ask then St. Martha to obtain this grace for us, not to travel through life doing too many things, but knowing that there is a simple bliss in just being with the loved one. Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibis, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibis, ubi caritas et amor.